If you're trying to conceive and feeling overwhelmed with fertility advice, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to Don't Tell Me to Relax, your fertility podcast and antidote to unhelpful fertility information. I'm Hannah, a fertility acupuncturist, teacher and campaigner for better fertility education. This podcast aims to empower and inform you about your menstrual cycle and fertility. It's basically all that information you didn't get in sex ed at school, with the aim of improving your understanding of your reproductive health and optimizing your fertility. Hello, lovely people, and welcome to this episode of Don't Tell Me to Relax. Today, I am joined by two gentlemen, which is a very rare occurrence on this podcast, and it's so lovely to have you here. So I'm with Shaun Greenaway, who is aka Knackered Knackers on Instagram, and Kieran Hannigan, who is the Male Fertility PT. And they co-host the Male Fertility podcast. And this is a podcast specifically aimed at men. And Shaun and Kieran talk and discuss their own personal experiences of fertility issues, which I think is great because, as we often say, we don't hear from men enough, I think, in this space. So Shaun and Kieran, thank you for your time and welcome. Would you like to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about how you came to meet, know each other, start your work and do your podcast?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Who do you want to take it, mate? You, me, or you?
I'll go. So yeah, just to kind of give a really brief background of what brought me here was my wife and I started trying to conceive in 2017, and after about a year of nothing happening, we went to the doctors, and I was diagnosed with azoospermia, which is zero sperm, and it was a very lonely place to be as a man. This was kind of 2017 into 2018, and there was no one talking about it, and it was hard. It was extremely hard, a lot of grief involved, and I had a couple of operations to try and rectify that, which were unsuccessful. So we elected to progress our dream of being parents by using donor sperm, and in 2021 we were blessed with our beautiful twins, Ray and Evelyn. So life's been amazing, carnage, but amazing since, and it just got to the point where I was like, I just felt almost compelled to start sharing my story and be what I needed. I can't be the only one because I felt like I was the only one for so long. So I just started sharing my story, and it's gone further than I ever could have imagined. And to the point now, like you said, where Kieran and I are hosting our own podcast about it, and it's such a crucial and much needed voice in the community, because there's so little of it, but the stats are there. You know, it's kind of well publicized that 1 in 6 people worldwide will experience infertility, and around 50% of that is due to the man. And we're here to show people that they are, like, men, that they're not alone. And we it was almost a chance meeting. We walked out of the fertility show, just happened to be at the same time, back in must have been 2021 maybe, and that was like the first time we'd met each other. And we roughly recognized each other, because it's not hard. You can probably count on 2 hands the amount of men that are talking about this openly on social media. So we just had a chat and then kept in contact, and then most of last year was us discussing starting the podcast. I think we came up with the idea potentially around February, and then eventually hit record on our first ever episode around October, I think it was, wasn't it, mate?
Yeah, it was October. Yeah. It seems to have gone very quick, though, which was unbelievable. Like, we were having a discussion just the other day, weren't we? How fast it's gone. But yeah, a little bit about me. My fertility journey, if we're going to call it that, started in 2000. And very quickly and abruptly, I learned that I had male factor infertility after initially the consultants believing it was my wife's PCOS that was causing the issue. Actually, right at the end, just before we went on to Clomid, they tested me and found out that I had a very poor sperm quality, and that kind of chucked me into kind of a bit of a depressive cycle, if we can put it like that. It kind of took a few years to kick in, but I got into quite a deep, dark hole because of it, because I couldn't find any support. I couldn't find anybody to talk to, really. There was no one I could relate to. I felt like I was the only person in the world with this issue. So I, after about 3 years or so, I kind of realised that it was me that would have to put things in place to help sort myself out. So I used my background in sport and exercise and put together a program for myself, not just for my physical needs, but also for my mental needs. And over an 18-month period, my sperm quality really increased. I went from having around 1,500 sperm with about 1% viability to a 4 million sperm and over a 4 viability. So I was able to take control of my own life to really kind of aid the quality of my sperm. We still needed ICSI treatment, but obviously the quality was much better, and we were really lucky that from that final cycle that we were going towards, my son came from it. So that was like the beginning of my journey in a nutshell. And since then, we've been through another round of cycles, and my daughter came from that. So I'm very privileged and lucky. But the problems were still there, so I still had to go through the same process. But Shaun explained it perfectly. During going for our second child, for Enya, I was able to access more support because there was more available. And I came across Shaun on Instagram, and we kind of just had exchanged a few messages and likes, and we were following each other and just kind of keeping on track with each other, I guess. And we met at just a freak chance, met at the fertility show, and we've kind of been buddies since then, haven't we, mate? It grew.
Yeah. It's really good to pull each other along at times and just help each other through, because we are still living this, and what's important, like compared to my story and Kieran's, is that we're still in the same umbrella of male fertility issue. Like, it doesn't matter how you've ended up in this situation, it's equally as rubbish for everyone, and we're always having to live with it as well. It doesn't just go away when you have children. It's something that you carry.
Yeah. And that's really interesting because obviously in our clinic, we mostly work with women. I'd say 99% of people we see in our clinic are women. And often when, the people that we work with get pregnant, they go on and have their children. We continue working with people right the way through. And often the reason we work through pregnancy and the early stages after they've had their children is because there's still a lot of grief and anxiety and fear. And just because your journey has ended with a successful pregnancy and live birth, it doesn't mean the trauma of what you've been through suddenly disappears. In fact, it often doesn't. And it's a part of the fertility story that I don't think that a bit like men, that kind of postnatal problems is something that I don't think we talk about enough. But it's definitely something that we see in our clinic. But just going back, like I presume both of you you must have gone through lots of medical appointments, lots of kind of contact with medics, doctors, nurses. At any point, did anybody talk about the mental health side of what you were going through?
No, never. It was, I was literally told that I was infertile or very poor quality sperm. And I was told things that I need to improve. So, improve your diet, stop drinking alcohol, lose a bit of weight. And they were the three main things. And then I left the consultation room, and that was it. Like, there was no follow-up, nothing. But my wife, on the other hand, got loads of stuff.
Yeah.
But she was able to find support so much easier. But it was very much like just left out in the dark. We're going back over a decade now, and I think things have come forward. Like me and Shaun are proving that things are changing, and there's a podcast on it now. But back then, you couldn't even find basic advice online. So no, is the answer to that. I wasn't supported in any way.
And so do you think that it's changed, that now it's a different situation? Now, do you think people who go through being told they might have issues with their sperm health, do you think they get better support for the emotional side of that diagnosis?
Well,
I'd say not in clinic. I still think there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. Like
Yeah.
when that news is initially delivered. But there are people out there talking about it now, but it's all got to be self-done in my head. Like people still have to go out and find that support. It's changing, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be. But I
Yeah.
think we're looking at like a 10-year project rather than it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. Society's views of it's got to change. The medical profession's views of that mental health aspect of it has got to change. And that takes time.
Yeah, I echo that.
Shaun, do you get contacted by lots of people through Instagram?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I mean, like to kind of touch on what Kieran said as well. So I spoke at a conference for fertility nurse practitioners at the end of 2022, and I still get people come to me who have been referred to me via those nurses who are in clinics throughout the whole country. But those nurses are recognizing that those men are not being seen and heard. And so they are saying, oh, there's this guy who's talking. And so that's still happening now. And that's quite some time ago now. And so yeah, mostly, like kind of historically, I've always been contacted, like by and large, by female partners because I get it. I was there. I didn't want to talk. I refused. I said I didn't need the help. And my wife, she knew I did. And it's the same with the partners who contact me. The male partner is in so much pain and not themselves. And it's kind of the question is, what can I do? How can I help them? And often, unfortunately, you there's only so much you can do. You can signpost, you can give little like hints that there's help out there, but ultimately, if that person isn't willing to make that step themselves, you'll never push them to do it. I know because my wife tried, and it was just pushing me further away, pushing me further within myself.
Mm. So what was it that changed in you that led you to get some support?
It was an ongoing, very long, ongoing journey. I needed to go. I was going through what I didn't know at the time, but now in reflection, I know is grief. And I just thought that I was
Yes.
angry at work or just low because of life in general. But what I didn't realize is that I was going through a life changing event, literally life changing. That everything that we had been doing over the years, kind of getting married, moving to a slightly bigger terraced house just outside of town, so with a garden and a driveway, and getting our last few holidays out of the way to then start having family and all these plans. And we both, in our early days of dating, discussed that we wanted to be parents. And you just assume it's going to happen, and suddenly that is ripped away, and it's like strange kind of grief that isn't really acknowledged, because often when it comes to grieving, we are talking about the loss of a loved one, and you have those tangible memories and
Mm.
photos, but you're losing a dream. You're losing this picture that is just in your head of this life that you thought you were going to have. And I just felt completely alone, and which was exacerbated by not being able to find anyone talking about it and assuming that I was the only one. And then on top of that, having the huge dent to my ego and my identity as a man. And it took a long time. I was in a very deep, dark place for years. And there was small steps. I mean, what eventually led me to talk, it was almost like a light bulb moment. But it's not like that just happened without other stuff happening in the past, which some of which may have been more unconscious. But I just started consuming a lot more healthy material, such as books and podcasts of people who have been through life-changing events, whether it was kind of accidents that led to paralysis, etc., and hearing stories of other people who have thrived in spite of what they've been through. And even though I couldn't find stuff about infertility or male infertility, it's all those little things going, just putting little seeds in my mind of you can change. That there is more to you than just your ability to have a biological child or not. You're still a good man. You can still be a good father. You just got to push on, and it's like I said, it's a long process, which I think ultimately would have been a lot swifter and shorter had I found other people to talk to. But I got there in the end, and the real key was
Mm.
talking in the end.
Yeah. And what do you think about this idea? I mean, I'm interested in both of you to hear what you think about this, because we talk a lot around a sort of campaigning to test more and test sooner. Because, lots of people wait until they're married, or wait until they've got the house, or wait until they've been trying for a year. And we know that people are starting to have their families later, and we know that this has an impact on, what path they end up going on. So I kind of feel really strongly that we should be testing people more, and we should be testing them sooner, even maybe before you've started. Maybe you just meet somebody and you just want to find out. And I know, like, different people have different opinions about that. NHS is like, wait for a year, but I really have a gut feeling that, testing soon is a good thing for men and for women. When you look back at your journeys, how does that fit with you?
I think, I mean, I was, 25 when I had my first semen analysis, which isn't,
No, not old at
but
all.
for me, it comes down to education, especially for the young lads. Like, they need to know
Yeah,
that this is available. I mean, you talk to any young lady, young woman, they know that they need a smear test and things like that. They know about how to keep themselves healthy and what's available to them, where most lads don't have a clue, don't even
yeah,
think about it. They spend all their time worrying about how they're not going to get girls pregnant, rather than worrying if they can. You know, the modern day trend with sperm is the fact that it's declining. It's declining
mm,
rapidly, and that's something that needs to be brought into education, the public eye, shall we say? Like, it's not going away; it's only going to get worse. So we need to be preparing these young lads, and part of that could be having a semen analysis at a certain age. When you get to 21, everyone should have one. That kind of
yeah,
age where you've kind of probably got out of your system having all your fun, not all your fun, but a lot of your fun, and you kind of life opens up and it starts to settle a bit more. So for me, it's something that needs to come alongside like raw education about the subject, because you can test someone or say to someone they need a test, but unless they know why,
yeah,
they're less likely to do it. Um,
yeah,
so, but I mean, I've taught in schools and things, and it's always well taken. Well, the lads are really appreciative, and they don't know things. Like, I didn't realise that would affect my fertility. I go, yeah, it does, and this affects it, and this affects it. So for me, I think testing at a younger age is something that should be brought in with education. Otherwise, they won't understand why it needs to happen.
yeah. You know what? I always say that I think that, I mean, for women, often we have touch points with medical professionals when we need to, renew our contraception, have smears, so we have these points where we go in. And I always think that, wouldn't it be amazing if were having those conversations, in our 20s, late 20s, early 30s, where somebody was just checking in with us, like, okay, what's going on? What's going on with your menstrual cycle? Are you thinking about having children? And what you've just said made me realize that must be even less for men, that those a lot of the time women have to go because of smears or contraception, but men, I guess it's that's not the case. So there's even
No.
less education and less touch points of health kind of check-ins.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
and
like,
there's
most young men won't know. Sorry, buddy, you go. You go.
thanks, mate. But yeah, and it's like the previous perceptions that fertility was more of a female based issue, because that's the way it's always been viewed. But now we are knowing that there are so many more. It's exacerbated by things like old celebrities having children. Just so the assumption that men, their
Yeah,
sperm don't decline, that it's there and they're just there forever. But it's acknowledging that there are many different factors that can affect it. And so, like Kieran said, it's education earlier, and that we should be getting tested. And now the prevalence of things like home testing kits that can, yeah, of course they don't replace clinical grade tests, but they can give you a good idea, because we both know and have discussed how hard those tests can be when you psychologically, especially after you've been given an adverse result. And I think as well, certainly from
yeah,
my experience, there needs to be more education for healthcare professionals, those that aren't working specifically in fertility, because I had two kind of brushes, so to speak, with healthcare professionals from illnesses when I was younger. And one being in 2005, I was 22 and I had mumps. And the crucial thing about that age is that it's post-puberty. All of my glands were very swollen, including my testicles, which were very enlarged. And I was extremely ill. I was going to the doctors for this, and they were treating the virus at hand and trying to deal with the here and now. But at no point at all did anyone say anything about fertility. And bearing in mind, my
Gosh.
balls were swollen, and that is a known cause of male infertility, mumps
Yeah.
orchitis. It was not
Yeah.
said to me in any way, shape, or form. And so, I got better and then just went off on my way 3 weeks down the line when it was, 3-week illness. And had I had that in my head, bearing in mind, but that, this is still the pre-Google years, pre-smartphone years, where we've got so much knowledge in our pockets. But had I known about that, I would have liked to think that the 22-year-old me would have done something about it and at least looked it up here and there, and maybe a couple of years down the line. But then again, 6 years on, in 2011, by this point I was with my wife, and I was doing the checks that every bloke should be doing in the shower or bath, and I found a lump. I called my wife in. She came in and she felt it. It was very obvious. So I actually still remember the worried look in her eyes when she felt it too. So again, went to the doctors and went for a scan, and the sonographer brushed it off. Oh, he said, "Don't worry, it's just a cluster of tubes." Because obviously, I'm concerned about a tumour. That's what he was looking for, and that just a cluster of tubes was a varicocele, which in subfertile men accounts for around 40% of fertility issues, and it can have an impact on counts, motility, morphology, DNA fragmentation. It can have huge issues. And so I've gone off out the door happy that I've not got something like kind of quote unquote more serious, but what that could have been doing back then was massively affecting any sperm that I did have, and it's all unknowns, essentially, because we didn't then start trying for 6 more years, but could a bit of earlier intervention and earlier knowledge circumvented the issues that I was going to find down the line? Could they have, by signposting me and warning me, could I have had tests? That it's all big question mark, and essentially I don't know whether it was the mumps or the varicocele that led to my infertility, or a combination of both. And I'm now at a point where I am at such a state of acceptance that I don't need to know. It's kind of loosely always been referred to on my letters as mumps as being the cause, but for me it doesn't matter. The result's the same. But I think there should have been at least signposting at the very minimum on both of those occasions.
Yeah. And it is shocking, isn't it? I always find it shocking how many women I work with who go through fertility treatment because of male factor issues, and yet the male partner has had one sperm analysis and nothing further than that. So, she is going through maybe, let's say, 2 rounds of IVF, and has had transvaginal scans, hycoses, blood tests, injections, egg collections, all of that. And yet the partner has had one sperm analysis, and they've said, okay, we'll do ICSI. And I know, I've had conversations with Claire Mooney and other people who specialize in male fertility who just say, we are really not serving men properly in terms of our investigations, not even giving people a scan or looking at their testicles, checking their bloods before they go through treatment. It doesn't make any sense to me.
No, this is something that I'm really passionate about. I think that I'm proof, just because of what I went through, that if you just change your lifestyle, you can actually help your fertility a lot. You might still need the same treatment, but with a better quality, sperm, there's, the likelihood is that there's going to be a better outcome. It's not always the way, but if we can improve things, and men can be checked, and men can have that ongoing kind of analysis of, okay, let's do 3 months exercising well, eating the right diet, looking after yourself, and see what's happened. Okay, it's improved a bit. Let's do another 3 months. And you just, climbing that ladder is tough. But it's so often you'll have an analysis, and then it's like, yeah, we're going to put you onto ICSI. That's never explained to the guy of, actually, we could do something to actually improve this sperm health, which means that you might still need ICSI, but it will give you a better, chance of this being successful. And like I said, it's not always the way, but the conversation's not even had. And it comes down, like in my view, it's the fact of, well, the medical profession goes, well, we're going to need this anyway, so we might as well just do it. And that's wrong, because you're not looking after the individual patient, the individual patient's needs. It's a big thing, and Shaun mentioned it earlier. Like, it's a massive knock on your feeling, your ego as a man. And if you can take a bit of that control back and actually put something in place and run a program or run something that gives you that little bit of feeling of control, and you're seeing the improvements in your sperm health, and at the end of the day, you're still going to need treatment, but you're kind of looking after yourself physically and mentally. It's a win-win for everyone. Like, it generally is. Like, it was such a big thing for me to be able to feel like I had some control over what was going on, and that all the work that I was doing was having an impact. But so often you kind of just shelve and put, you need ICSI. Well, actually, what can we do before then?
Yeah. And that's really interesting, Kieran, as well, because you've just sort of reminded me that often we work with people, again, we're the other side, and women we work with often say, I find it really difficult to engage my partner. My partner, maybe they don't want to do tests, maybe they don't want to change their lifestyle, and it can often cause quite a bit of friction, obviously, in the couple. But I also think it's really hard, because lots of people, when they go to fertility clinics and they're sitting in front of a doctor, the doctor is speaking to the woman and not to the man. And therefore, the man, and sorry if I'm putting words in here, because I'm just reflecting on what I hear. I imagine that it's very easy to feel like you have no part in this, or that it's all about the woman and not you, because everything is aimed at the woman. So this kind of lack of engagement sometimes starts from that first appointment in the fertility clinic, where you are kind of asked to do one sperm test, and thank you very much, that's your job done. And so it really does start right from that point, doesn't it? And it's not surprising. And I know there's lots of reasons why people might not engage, but if the health professionals aren't engaging with you, then why would you engage in that process? Because it's not encouraged.
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
Let me
it's go on, buddy, you go.
I could give a great example of like kind of that from our own perspective. So when we eventually got referred onto a fertility clinic, we were given our patient number. So we both had the same number, but mine had a P after it. That P stood for partner, but I was the infertile one. I was the reason we were there, and I was still treated as the partner.
Yeah.
And so, it's a problem from the moment you go to the first GP right through to the fertility specialist. It's like, in my case, again, we had the inkling because of the mumps when we went to the doctor after a year of trying, and we said, we've been trying, nothing's happening. I had mumps when I was 22, but he still referred us both on for tests. And don't get me wrong, that is the right thing to do, and that should be happening every time across like the board, no matter who's going there for what. But like in Kieran's situation, his wife was being tested for ages and ages. It was years down the line before Kieran was given a sperm analysis, asked to do a sperm analysis, and which is crazy. It is so kind of women centered that, and again, like you're saying, at appointments, I've sat there, I felt like I was invisible, and there were times where I was quite frankly in shock, and that's probably recognised by the clinicians and the doctors, that they probably realise that I've got that kind of 1,000-yard stare anyway. So it's maybe the right thing to do to speak to the partner. Or how about checking in and saying, "Are you okay? Do you want to have 5 minutes?" Compose yourself, because we are still both in it together, and you go to these appointments together because you're going through fertility treatment together. But there was other times where I would be I worked out a way of making myself more present and kind of avoiding that situation where I would zone out because of shock or upset or trauma or whatever. I started making notes in the appointment. So I was clearly there and engaged, but still was the one on the side.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy that is the situation when you know that the issue is male factor, and that is how you go through the treatment.
This is exactly what I was going to say. What Shaun just said.
Mm.
That whole from that first letter, it said Jennifer Hannington and partner. Well, that and partner is the reason why we're having this treatment.
Yeah.
What it should have said was Kieran Hannington and Jennifer Hannington.
Yeah.
And I'm not the fact of I want to be the one that's leading the line and no, this is because of me or this is my issue. But it is. This is why we're doing it. Like it was because I didn't have good enough quality sperm, and that happened all the way through. And I even brought it up at clinic. I was like, I want this addressed. And it didn't. It just always came through as Jennifer Hannington and partner.
Mm.
But it comes back to that why. Like men were looking at this and go, well, it's not addressed to me. So why should I be bothered?
Yeah.
And that's not a negative thought in terms of the man having a negative thought. It's just how we think. Look at it and go, subconsciously I go, oh, it's got my wife's name on it.
Mm.
When actually inside I'm thinking, that's because of me. So I have to start right at the beginning. Right, as soon as diagnosis comes in, the game changes. It's not the same game you're playing anymore. And within the medical profession, you've got to pick that up.
Yeah. So if you if there's anybody listening to this and you wanted to sort of impart advice or things that you've learned along this journey that you've found helpful, so maybe somebody's they've just had a sperm analysis back and it's not what they thought, what kind of pieces of advice or information would you give to that man or the couple?
I would say it's that when those results first come in, just take time. Because you will be essentially in shock at that point. It's even though no matter how much you think you might have an inkling of something, when that comes through in black and white on the letter, you get the results. It really is life changing. Everything turns on its head, and so take your time. Really try not to push each other aside, because especially like I did, as like we've both mentioned, like because I was struggling with my ego and identity having a huge knock. I wasn't talking, and even to my wife, who is like we've just said, we're in it together. We're both going to the appointments together, but I was just like a robot almost, and that wasn't a healthy place to be. And I know in hindsight now that actually that delayed us for a long time, really moving forward, because I had just shut down. And what really started to get the wheels moving and us progressing forward was communication. And I'd say just try it, firstly, in your own relationship, really try not to let that communication break down. And it's not about having the answers, because we don't get, like we've mentioned, you don't get the education, you don't get training in this. You're navigating and feeling your way through it together. But just communicate. What do you need? What can I do for you? What do you want from me? But also communicate if your needs aren't being met, what you want. Because it's not about one person leading the way, leading the support. There'll be times where you need to lean on each other. There'll be times where you're both there moving forward at the same time. And it's just acknowledging that we all have different coping strategies and different timescales for that. And then, so that's, I think, the most important thing is within your relationship, within your partnership, is to try and stay as open with communication as possible. And then secondly to that is to talk outside of that, because find someone who's been through it if you can, or heed the advice of the clinic, because again, I was like, no, don't need to speak to anyone. But partly because of that, it was because I didn't feel that I was being seen there. Like there was no man to talk to, and there was no way I could talk about my issues with a woman at the time, because I was being so impacted as a man. Then eventually when I did, they they are fantastic. They're there for a reason. They're highly trained. But yeah, seeking support and mutual kind of hearing stories and going to groups online. There's a lot about online now of people that are in the same situation. Finding your tribe really does help, because you hear that you're not the only ones, and everyone has different perspectives, different experiences, and you can all help each other along the way.
Yeah. Thank you, Shaun. Kieran, have you got anything to add to Shaun's?
Well, what Shaun said, I could echo. It
Yeah.
is about finding that someone to talk to, and everything he said was perfect. Um, from my point of view, it's very easy when you get this diagnosis, go into this tunnel vision. Like Shaun's mentioned it, it's a really weird experience. Take time to process it and go home and really think about, look at your sperm analysis, and if there's anything you don't understand or the treatment that you don't understand, don't be afraid to ask for the answers, or what does this mean? Because that will once again give you a feeling like you've got a little bit of control, like you know what's going on. And for me, one of the biggest things was I never understood what was going on. I just constantly felt like I was completely out of control, like I didn't know what to do. So when they say to you, like, you've got to change your diet, or you've got to do this, well, how do I do that? Can you tell me how I do that? Because it's only until, look, at the end of the day, people who are going through this are customers of clinics. They're paying for, a lot of them are paying privately for these type of things. And you have a right to ask for a bit of guidance. And don't be afraid to reach out. If you don't get the answers that maybe you think, the clinic can't help you, reach out and find people that can. Even if, like Shaun said, it's just that supportive group. There are more out there now. And just find the thing that's right for you. There's groups, there's a podcast now like we're doing, there's some others out there, there's books, there's something developing for everyone now. It's just trying to find what will work for you. So I'd echo everything Shaun said, but also if you've got any questions that you're really not sure throughout your treatment, don't be afraid to ask your clinic directly. And if you have to ask 2, 3, 4 times, keep asking the same question until you get the answer that actually makes sense. And explore what support's out there. Because if you don't want to talk to someone face to face, there is reading material, there is things you can listen to, there's groups that you can sit in and not participate in. There's so much developing. So, that would be my extra advice on top of what Shaun said.
Thank you. And actually what I'll do is I will obviously link to your podcast. And I will also link to some of the online support groups, because I think it's really helpful, isn't it, to be signposted to that information and support. So I will list all of that on the bottom of the show notes. So obviously I'll put all your details, and you've got, is it 9? How many episodes of your podcast?
There's 8 out at the moment.
8 out. Okay. Fab.
Yeah.
Fab. Well, I bet that is a really good resource for people. So I will link to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Shaun and Kieran, for giving up your time today. It has been so insightful. And you know what? I mean, as I say, I work with lots and lots of women in clinic and not very men. And it has been so interesting to hear the male side of things. So I really appreciate you sharing your stories and thoughts and feelings with us today, because it has been helpful for me personally as well. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Hannah. Yeah, thanks for giving us a platform to do it.
Pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As always, we hope you have found this helpful, and we will see you again next time. If you've enjoyed listening to this and want to find out more, then come and join my free community in Facebook. We have loads of resources. You can catch up on all our previous webinars and be the first to know about forthcoming events. To sign up, just follow the link in the show notes. And if you'd like to work one-to-one with myself or one of the team, then please see our website, hannahpern.com, where you can book in directly or organise a discovery call to find out how we can support your fertility and your reproductive health.